Hello, and welcome to another TCAN Death Knight leveling guide. So today we're in Utgarde Keep, and I've already done a video on this, but I wanted to remake it because Blizzard recently added some dungeon nerfs, and I wanted to show that this was still possible and it's still really good XP per hour. In the last video, I did it as a Frost AoE spec, and this time around, I'm going to be doing it as a blood tanking spec, and I'm going to show you that it's just as fast doing it this way and gives you about the same XP per hour. Now, if you like these kind of guides, or if you like Death Knight soloing guides, where I'll show you how to solo dungeons and heroics in Wrath of the Lich King, then go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button for future videos. So before doing the poll here, let's talk about glyphs. For major glyphs, we're using Glyph of Deathstrike and Glyph of Disease. Now, we use these glyphs because Deathstrike is our primary ability in Blood, and this significantly increases our damage output. And for Glyph of Disease, this allows us to keep our diseases on the target without having to spend Unholy or Frost runes, which really just translates into more Death Strikes, which is more damage and more sustainability. For talents, I am using a deep blood spec, which includes Dancing Weapon, which a lot of people won't run, but I think this is a really good choice for bursting some bigger, beefier targets because it provides more damage output. And I'm also running Toughness and Frost and Dodge and Anticipation just so I can have some survivability. I'll also go ahead and leave a link to my talents in the description below. So the next thing to talk about is gear here, and mine is a little bit interesting where I'm using a mix of both damage and tanking gear, and the reason for this is because I want the mitigation against these mobs because they do kind of hit hard, and I understand maybe not everybody will be able to get the same type of tanking gear that I have, but I think there are some really good substitutes that you could get from the badge vendor. The rest of the gear is really just the brutal set, which is pretty easy to obtain just by PvPing. So before jumping into it, I really just wanted to show you guys real quick the two core abilities that Death Knights use. So the name of the game as a soloing Blood DK is really just to keep diseases on your target at all times, so that way we can use Death Strike as many times as possible. So to do this, we're going to start by casting Icy Touch on the target, followed up with a Plague Strike, and then we're going to use Pestilence. And every time we use Pestilence, it's going to reset the cooldown of the diseases on the target. So instead of using a Frost and Unholy rune to get diseases on the target, we can use a Blood rune instead. Now, by refreshing your diseases this way, what it'll do for us is it'll allow us to get an extra Death Strike off every single time, because Death Strike uses a Frost rune and a Plague rune. Which, this is a really big advantage when soloing, because every time you Death Strike, it heals us for about 15% of our overall health. So now that we got that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the poll where we'll do the same exact rotation. So doing the pulls are actually pretty easy. We're going to start with an Icy Touch, followed by a Plague Strike, then we're going to spread the diseases using Pestilence, and then we'll use one Death Strike, one Heart Strike, and Rune Strike anytime it's available. And then we're going to need to wait for our runes to come off cooldown. Once your runes start coming back up, there are different rotations you could do, but what I usually do is I follow up with another Pestilence to keep my diseases on the target with two Death Strikes, one Heart Strike, and again, Rune Strike anytime it's available. Now, keep in mind that that rotation isn't always going to be the same for every single pull, because sometimes you're going to want to save runes for defensives, or save your runic power to be using like your Dancing Weapon or Icebound Fortitude or things like that. So things do change quite often, but that tends to be the most standard rotation. So for the pulls in this room, I'm really just trying to keep it to about 2 mobs per pack. This tends to be the most efficient way of killing them, as well as for sustainability, because anything more than 2, you're going to really need to start using defensives to keep yourself up. Because there's not much more to really talk about in this room, and we're only doing 2 mob pulls, which is pretty straightforward and easy, I'm just going to go ahead and fast forward until we get to the next room, in which we'll start talking about the mobs and what they do. So as I indicated before, there's some different mobs in these 3-pack pulls. The first mob that we're going to want to prioritize are the metal workers, which they do an extra attack that does a lot of damage, so it's kind of hard to heal through, so we're definitely going to want to prioritize these first. The next mob that we're going to want to prioritize second are the Forge Masters, and these guys do a stun. Now, they're not too difficult to deal with, but they can be a nuisance. And the last mob is the Weaponsmiths. Now, they don't really hit hard or do much, but they do dispel the diseases off of themselves, so you're going to want to make sure you're interrupting that. Also, keep in mind there are 3 of these 3-pack pulls, so you're going to want to save some of your bigger cooldowns, especially for when you're fighting the pack that has 2 metal workers in it. So again, we're going to start by focusing on the metalworker here first, and then we're going to cast our dancing weapon just so we can burn through them as quick as possible. So now that we have this pack down, this last one's going to be a bit more challenging because it does have 2 metal workers in it. So this is where we're going to want to use a lot of our cooldowns like Icebound Fortitude, our Vampiric Blood, our Pet, and basically any remaining cooldowns that we have to try to get these metal workers down as quick as possible. So now that we have this group down, we do have about 3 minutes to spare because we're trying to do 12 or 13-minute runs here to avoid lockout. So we're going to start heading over to the dragon area and we're going to start doing some of those pulls. These proto drakes here, they don't really do much. They're mostly just a tank and spank fight, but they do have a lot of health, hence why they do give about 9,300 XP to the 4,500 that we were getting from the other mobs. But we're just going to power through this. So this next pull, we are going to focus on killing the dragon handler first. Now, there really isn't much to worry about here. The only thing the dragon handler can do is buff the proto drake with like a frenzy buff, but it's very manageable and you should be able to heal through it. So there you have it. This is going to be the last pull of the run because we are at about that 12-minute mark here. But this is pretty straightforward and easy, not overly difficult. And what you can see is it's about the same amount of mobs that I killed when I was doing the AoE runs, but it's just a different way of killing them now. So hopefully y'all found this video helpful, and if you did, it would really mean a lot to me if you would consider subscribing to the channel. And I will see y'all when Wrath launches. Peace.